Hello, Uglies. Come and see us and a collection of stars from the Boulet Brothers Dragula at Midsummer Scream in Long Beach on Friday, July 26th, Saturday, July 27th, and Sunday, July 28th at the Long Beach Convention Center. We'll be doing photos and meet and greets with all of you at the Boulet Brothers Dragula booth, and we'll be doing an exclusive panel at 6 p.m. on Saturday that you're all invited to attend at no additional charge. We will also be launching some exciting new limited edition merch at the convention, and you will be able to meet and take photos with some of the cast throughout the weekend. Get your tickets now at midsummerscream.org and check out our Instagram for the full weekend schedule.
Now from Hollywood, California, the horror capital of the world, the Boulet Brothers. Creatures of the night.
Welcome back to the Catacombs, my little monsters. As always, we are your ghostly guides on tonight's journey into horror, the Boulet Brothers Dragula
and Swanthula.
And we have so much to get to tonight that we are just going to jump into it.
Yes.
Let's talk about Midsummer Scream first.
Okay.
Yeah, so coming up on the 27th, we have Midsummer Scream, which is the biggest Halloween and horror convention in the world.
It's so good. Like, we went for years before we actually started going with the Dragula and whole Boulet Brothers presence. And last year, we kind of debuted there, and it was so good, and I'm so excited to go back.
I'm excited, too. We're going to have some of the stars from the Boulet Brothers Dragula there. Ian will be there with us as well, and the three of us are doing a panel on our favorite and most iconic looks from horror history. The 10 favorite.
The Killer Looks.
Killer Looks panel. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah. And our booth will be out there in full regalia. We'll have meet and greets, photo ops all weekend, exclusive merch, some of the standard merch, the stuff that everybody knows and loves. They'll be doing makeup demos throughout the weekend. There's a lot to see at the booth. It was really popular last year, and I hope it continues to this year.
Yeah, I do too. I'm excited to go back. And not only that, I'm excited to sneak around before it opens and buy all the good stuff before everybody else gets there.
That is the best move. And I just want listeners to know that the panel is going to be on Saturday, July 27th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, 6 p.m., so make sure you're there. All right, so we're going to be reviewing 2 new huge horror film releases tonight. But before we get to that, we have to ask, what did Jennifer do?
What did Jennifer? You know what? What didn't Jennifer do?
What didn't Jennifer do? So last episode, we talked a little bit about true crime, and we said we were going to watch a doc on Netflix called What Did Jennifer Do? So we do need to do a quick recap for those who watched it and find out what Jennifer did. So do you want to do the honors?
Sure. And we're talking about Jennifer Pan. She's a young student from Canada, of all places. And there's a mystery that unfolds because there's a 911 call and her house is broken into and it's her. And she's like, oh, I'm like tied up on the banister and my parents are downstairs. Like, oh my God, I'm hearing pops. Like, help me, save me. And her acting is top notch. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, this girl, what a tragedy. Like the trauma. Wow, you could just hear it in her voice. And it kind of unfolds because the mom dies. The dad is shot in the face.
But she's in custody at the police station because they're like trying to help her. And of course, they're like, you're a victim of crime, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, your father survived. And she was like, gloop. She was like, what? And, yeah. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, the long story short is Jennifer Pan hired hitmen to take out her parents, and she was present, and the dad actually came out of his induced coma because he was shot in the face, lost an eye, was like in all this surgery intensive care, comes out and he's like, my daughter did it. And what happened was the guys broke in the house. And the way that they got, well, there was no sign of breaking an entry. So how did they get in? Jennifer came down and said, when my mom got back from line dancing around 9:30, I went in to check on her and just say, hi, Mom. Okay, good night. Give her a kiss. I'm going to check the front door. So she goes to the front door and unlocks the front door and goes upstairs and goes to fucking bed. And then these 3 guys come in, start brutalizing her mother, and the dad is screaming in the corner, and Jennifer comes downstairs and walks right by this all happening in her living room. The brutalization of her mother, her death.
And she does
crazy.
Nothing. That
crazy.
That to me is the most gag-worthy thing of this whole documentary is that she could do that. She could just sit there because the parents weren't abusive to her. They were controlling apparently, but they weren't abusive to her. So I'm like, what's
I got
happening?
the sense they were like very controlling, like smothering.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely, because they told her who she couldn't date, what she would go to college for, her major. Like they were really
But she had
heavy-handed.
the choice to walk away from them, and she didn't take it. And she even said that because they were like, "You have to pick us or your boyfriend." And she was like, well, I chose them because I love them. So
I
it's
thought
like,
that was part of the performance, though, because she was like lying through her teeth to the cops, to everybody. And it was believable until it got too complicated, and then she started to fall apart.
I will give her this. She is a great actress.
I mean, it was like shockingly scandalous.
Yeah. To me, the weirdest thing that happened was they put a little blurb at the end that was like, Jennifer's father got a permanent life. What is it called? Like restraining order against her so that she can never contact him for the rest of his life. And that's just so dark.
Another dark little anecdote from this is that her mother's last words were reported to be, "Please don't hurt my daughter." Mm-hmm. It's just insane.
Yeah.
And, I think the doc was fine. The plot sort of unfolded in an almost obvious, sort of like unsurprising way. Like you saw it coming from a million miles down the road.
Did you? I did.
Oh man, I totally did. But what Jennifer did was actually the most interesting part of this documentary.
Well, I guess that's where they got the title from,
That's
right?
what Jennifer did.
Well, that's the story, kids. Do not kill your parents, or do not hire other people to kill your parents either, and then watch it happen. At least have the decency to walk out of the room.
Exactly.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to the show, Ian.
Hello, Drac. Hello, Swan.
Hello. Are you excited about Midsummer Scream?
I cannot wait for Midsummer Scream. I have not had the date on my calendar because I didn't know which one it was going to be, but I have blocked the whole weekend off, so I cannot wait for the 27th at 6 p.m.
Now, if you're smart, you will come there on Friday and meet us so we can go pre-shopping before the thing opens.
When we go on Friday, are we going to be able to go to like the haunt area? Or
Yes.
is the, okay,
Yep.
okay. That's the one thing I was like really disappointed I didn't go to last time.
You mean the Hall of Shadows?
Ooh, exactly.
It's so cool. It's like night in there. It's huge, and there's like little. It feels like you're at like Knott's or something. Like this
so
little haunted
cool.
house thing set up. The lines are a little long, but if we go on Friday, it should be fine because we'll be the first in.
It is a haunted house sampler buffet.
Yeah.
It's miniature versions of all the haunts all over Southern California, and they
So
kind of go in there and build
cool.
it. It's cool.
I mean, I'm not scared of a long line, but I will say that the last time that we did long lines, I was dating a guy who was crazy, and we played a slapping game in the line, and I can no longer play that game.
Oh my God. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna go check it out. I almost wish our booth was in the Hall of Shadows. That would be cool.
That would be
Oh, that would be
awesome.
cool.
Right? So it would be nighttime and we could put out jack-o'-lanterns and stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of into it.
And control and kind of like block out that horrible overhead convention lighting.
Diva. That's the scariest part.
It really is. It's
true.
horrifying.
All right, Ian, what is the news this week?
Well, this announcement is for all Creatures of the Night listeners who will be attending tonight's double feature Junior Mints Movie Club screening. Please make sure you have your tickets available so that our ghostly concierge can scan them when you least expect it. Oh, and remember to put your phone away because the penalty for not doing that is death. Before we dive into the great beyond, let's visit the world of Hollywood and horror and see what titillating news items have been prepared for your pre-movie viewing pleasure. You've been to the movies recently and have had to sit through the now customary 30 minutes of previews, then you may be familiar with Fede Alvarez's upcoming Alien film, Alien Romulus. If you're a denizen of the internet like me, then you've also developed a mild obsession with novelty popcorn buckets that seem to be sprouting up like so many ghosts in the graveyard for every single film that comes out after the success of the Dune 2 Sandworm Fleshlight bucket. It seems as though Alien Romulus will also be getting a novelty popcorn bucket, this time in the attachment form with a standard large bucket with a face hugger attached to it with articulating legs and tail. Also, the producers of Alien Romulus have released a series of VHS tapes to certain members of the press that, when put into a real VHS player, reveal information about the film.
How cool. I love this stunt advertising.
Yeah,
it's
me
really
too.
Cool.
All these writers that are not even right, they're like college students or something, are gonna look at it and be like, what is this square?
What is this artifact from the 90s?
I read this article. It was from, I don't remember what website it was from, but basically the writer was like, I had to go to several different vintage shops to try to find a VHS player, and it was very difficult. And then finally when they did it, it's basically like, oh, we're gonna be at Comic-Con. So he was like, oh, okay, cool.
I mean, you can order them off of eBay, but still, it's not,
Hey, you know what? And who knows what that one's going to have on it.
Who cares about all that? I want the face hugger popcorn box.
Me too. It's actually really cute. And I think you can detach it fully so you can just be a regular person with a popcorn bucket.
I love it. I love all the Alien movies, even the bad
Yeah.
ones like 2 and 3. No, Aliens 3, I think, is like the really questionable one.
Oh,
But,
I love 3. It's
They're
so
all lovable.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
great. They're great. Well, speaking of VHS tapes, our next previews arrive in the form of big names attached to a long-standing film franchise and new horrific delights on the horizon. Playing this particular cursed VHS in reverse, it seems as though gaming giant Nintendo is getting ready to release their first core horror title in decades with a cryptic teaser for something called Project M, proliferating the internet, recently festooned with parental advisory warnings, but no concrete details have materialized yet. Keeping with that trend, rapper, actor, and producer Kid Cudi, fresh off the success of Maxine, which he served as executive producer of, was quoted in an interview saying that director Ty West and himself have already begun pre-production on their next project. If those names weren't big enough, the VHS franchise, best known for launching the careers of Ty West, Adam Wingard, and Radio Silence in the mid-2010s, is getting another entry into the series, this time with names such as Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel, and Justin Long, to name a few, attached to direct.
We heard about this a long time ago, and then I forgot about it because Kate was telling us about what she's going to do for us.
She's
So
I got this
cool.
upcoming project. Here's the story. What do you think? So we were talking about the premise of her VHS segment, but we
Oh,
didn't know
yes.
it.
Yeah, we didn't know
it.
that's what it was. But
And that track, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you gave her some pretty good advice, and I'm wondering if it'll make it in there.
we shall see.
We shall.
Ooh. And finally, before the lights began to dim for our double feature screening, I thought that it would be appropriate to mention the passing of one of history's most notable scream queens with the news that Shelley Duvall has passed away at the age of 75. Shelley Duvall's legacy is absolutely cemented in the world of Hollywood and horror, and she will be missed.
So did Richard Simmons, and so did Shannon Witch. What's her name?
Shannon Doherty.
Yeah, Shannon Doherty died too. Yeah.
Happens in threes.
Oh, yeah.
It almost
If
happened
only-
in fours, but it
I was about to
didn't.
say, if only it could happen in fours. Damn.
Dark times indeed.
All right, my darlings, it's now time for this episode's double feature Junior Mint's Movie Club review. Tonight we'll be discussing 2 new theatrical horror releases, the much anticipated Longlegs and Ty West's Maxine.
Not to be confused with T West. That is a completely different person.
That's a different person that Drac made up before he started recording.
So eerily, both of these films have ties to Psycho, which everybody knows we just did a retrospective on and watched all the Psychos in the franchise. Sorry, Ian.
What is that, Mother? No, I love the films, Mother. No, of course, Mother. Loved them, actually.
So, okay, yeah, in Maxine, we see the Psycho set a lot. We see the Bates Motel set. And then with Longlegs, Osgood Perkins directed and wrote the film. So it's a little creepy. Something weird is happening.
Spooky.
Something weird is happening in Hollywood, I think.
It's true.
Let's get to the bottom of it.
So why don't we start off with Longlegs, which is a new American horror thriller written and directed by Osgood Perkins under the Neon Film Distributor brand.
Neon. That reminds me of a funny story. So, like you were mentioning, there's a million previews now.
Oh, my God.
First of all, there's a half an hour of commercials, which I could definitely do without.
It's legitimately 30 uninterrupted minutes of commercials.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is happening?
Well, the thing that made me mad about it is they turned down the lights to play the commercials, and I think that's foul. I'm like, you don't turn down the lights until it's time for the previews.
Everybody knows that.
But there was I saw a bunch of neon trailers, and it was someone online was like, I'm at the Longlegs, I'm watching the debut of Longlegs, and A24, you need to step up your game. Neon's kicking your ass.
Oh my God. It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I went to go see Longlegs, I thought a similar thing. I was like, ooh, girl, Neon is getting her pussy out. But then also when I saw Maxine, I was like, oh, well, duh. Like, they're putting all the Neon trailers before the Neon movie, and then all the A24 trailers before A24. Duh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I think I saw his trailer for Maxine when we were watching Longlegs.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, dang.
I
okay.
know. They're mixing it all up. All right, so let's talk about Longlegs. So I guess I'll start. My immediate takes are, I thought it was very atmospheric, right? I thought that it had kind of an art house type horror film to it. Gritty, 90s rural kind of energy, right? I did think it was scary. I really liked the cinematography. I liked the scoring. I thought the score was really excellent, actually. It was unusual.
Yeah.
It almost sounded like a mixtape or something. It had some scratchiness to it that I really liked. And I thought the changing camera lenses and the film ratios really sucked you in. Did you guys feel that way?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it. I'm like, what is this square format? Because the movie starts off in that really controlled, like, little box. And I'm like, it feels claustrophobic. It adds to the creepiness. Then the image just starts expanding horizontally. And I'm like, wow, this is really enveloping.
Yeah, I thought for a brief moment, I thought that we were going to spend the whole movie in that, like, square Polaroid ratio. And I was like, whoa, that is a risk, honey.
She did too. She was like,
this is
it's
gonna
not going to
fuck
be a square, is it? And I was like, it's not. It's not.
Well, the more I thought about it, though, I was like, and of course, it's not there for too much longer, but I did have this thought of, oh, well, that's kind of a really interesting artistic choice, because obviously there's always going to be something that's hidden outside of the frame. And I think that is almost what ends up happening anyway. Like, there's always kind of something unseen, but same, Swan. For a moment, I was like, wait a dang minute.
I'm like, don't do this to me.
What are you all's immediate takes, like, without spoiling?
I adore Longlegs. I think it's a lot of fun, and of course, it's not a fun movie. This is bleak and grim and kind of gross in a lot of ways, but I just found myself kind of giddy with how dark it is. I was really taken aback by how funny it was, and I feel like that may have been a byproduct of the people that I saw it with, or just the theater that I saw it with. Like, a lot of the jokes landed very, very well, and that added to sort of a kind of a strange tone. Like, I feel like the movie whiplashed back and forth with this sort of, like, very grim dark, we're looking at these dead bodies, and then someone's making a really dry joke, and it was very uncomfortable. Drac, like you said, I really liked the cinematography. I liked the score. I kind of adore Nicolas Cage's really weird.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, little girl. I was like, whoa, this is weird.
What was your take on
I didn't know if we were watching Longlegs or Botched, because the close-up of that face, I was like, this is horror. This is pure horror, mama.
Her nose, what crazy.
My take was this. I think the obscure kind of like weird renegade marketing was genius. I kept hearing so much about this movie and just seeing little snippets, and it got me really excited, but I think it set my expectations super high, and I thought I was going to be terrified. Like, listeners know I get scared of everything, but sometimes movies can go really deep and really kind of get under my skin and get in my sleep and, like, really kind of fuck with me. I thought this was one of them, so I'm mentally preparing myself, and then it just didn't happen. It didn't happen. I never got that scared.
Would you say, like, Incantation was a scarier film, in your opinion?
I might.
I would say it's
think
scarier.
so.
It's not creepier.
That's the distinction I would make.
Yeah.
Is I think that if you're looking for jump scares and you're looking for saw gore and you're just looking for over the top, this film is not the tea. It's quiet and it's just creep factor on 100. And I was thinking about Incantation as well. I was like, oh my God, like, Incantation really just sat with me for a long time. And there were some jump scares. I mean, there are a couple of shots from this movie that will be hard to get out of my memory, but ultimately, I think it's more like a Silence of the Lambs type thriller.
100%. And I leaned over to Drac during the film, and I'm like, this has Silence of the Lambs kind of like all over it. And in this specific way, when I watched Silence of the Lambs, I felt like there was a web of intrigue happening. I'm like, there's like a grand scheme here, and I'm only seeing it through a keyhole.
Yeah.
And Silence of the Lambs delivers. Like, you get the ripples of chills when you find out everything that's going on with Starling and Buffalo Bill and all of it. But here with Longlegs, that intrigue was there, but the delivery never showed up.
That's interesting. I think that I saw that almost as I don't know that it's a huge strength for me, but I definitely recognize that. Like, I left the film wanting more, which can be a double-edged sword sometimes. I felt like the things that we didn't get were, what's the actual lore behind Longlegs? How do we get here? And I think that there are people who probably really are into this idea that we actually leave the film, I think, with more questions than we start with. Like, there's actually like no answers. I'm like, oh, okay. Well,
I know we were all Googling when we left. I'm like, now wait a damn minute.
Well, the director I was reading this interview with him, and it was kind of relatable because he was like, well, when you're first starting and you're sort of struggling to make it in the film world, you do all these pitches and you work on all these projects and you sort of start to build your own universe of characters that from a pitch that didn't get accepted or a concept or whatever, and they kind of live in your head. And he's like, when we were making this movie, I'm like, who is the villain? He's like, I feel like the character Longlegs that I had already created and was going to use for something else just seemed like the perfect fit.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Yeah, and so he put him in there, and I don't think there's a lot to it. I don't think he doesn't want to answer what like, for example, the ending. She tries to shoot the doll, and it's no bullets, right? So you're left with what happens. We don't know, you know? And I thought that was a great ending, actually. Yeah, so there is a lack of transparency with any details about the movie, but I don't think it necessarily hurt it, in my opinion.
It was atmospheric. I agree with you. It put us on a plane of existence that I don't think I've ever been to before. It definitely has its own kind of signature style and quality. I had a high level of expectation that it didn't get met.
But we need to talk about the creature design of Longlegs.
yes!
We got to talk about it because...
Yeah.
First of all, I thought it was very creepy and scary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was scary as hell. Like, the way they debuted that character with just the mouth down, I was like, I don't want to see. Don't lift the camera up.
Yeah, that intro in the snow when he's so pale and weird, his hair is so greasy. I'm like, ugh. I mean, this guy looks like a child murderer serial killer, straight up.
Well, here's a spoiler, by the way. So I didn't want to read anything about this movie. I knew nothing about it at all.
Okay.
And
oh, no.
only today did I discover that Nicolas Cage was in the fucking movie.
Holy shit,
you know how I am
girl.
with faces. I had no idea. I saw his name even in the credits. The credits before the movie was like produced by Nicolas Cage. I was like, that's interesting.
You're like, oh, good for her. You're like, good for this weird Granny Martha they cast too. I hope she gets something good out of this.
Granny? Yeah, so okay, that's my ridiculous story. But I have to say, this creature absolutely looks like someone that Heclina and Peaches would have introduced us to back in the day and be like, you don't know her? That's the legendary Cornflake. She's performed in San Francisco for 50 years.
You don't know Longlegs?
Do you guys see, right? Am I right?
I see. Oh, completely.
Yeah,
I could
100%.
easily see that. That is so funny.
And the voice and everything. I'm like, yep, you just walked straight from the Castro onto the movie set.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of Longlegs and Incantation, there's a new thing you guys are realizing, right? Like, when you're the antagonist, you got to bash your head in until you die.
Exuma,
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Wow.
All three of them, it happened.
Dang.
It's a new thing.
That head bash, that gooped me. Because, we've seen a couple of head bashes, and I think that a head bash, you can do it as an actor, and then, okay, cool. How much blood is going to be there? What's going to be CG? What's going to be not? Mama, Nicolas Cage bashed her head in. I was like, that's some goopy brain on your table.
I was like kind of looking and not looking, and I'm like, wow, they're really going in on the gruesome kind of display. Was his nose kind of missing?
Oh, yeah, like completely bashed in.
Ooh.
Yeah. I really, and again, I think maybe one of the things I really liked was this weird sense of humor. Like, speaking of Nicolas Cage, there's a moment in the interrogation where he just says, "Hail Satan." And I was like, oh my God, this is like, whether it's like really scary or not, I was like, this is weird on a level that I can't even put my finger on.
And by the way, the director also said, he was like, this is a satanic thing. It is the devil. Like, it's not hinting, it's almost, this is the devil.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that, because one of the things I really liked was the depiction of the devil. Just this cloaked figure with these really vibrant yellow eyes. Like, I thought, I was like, oh, this isn't just like helter-skelter, satanic killer. This is the devil. Like, the devil literally made her do it. The devil, and there's that monologue where the mom is like, you know, who's the man downstairs? Oh, well, he's the one who made you see what he wanted you to see, and he obscured what he didn't. And I'm like, oh, so the devil is real, and the devil was pulling the strings the whole time. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, I read a little bit afterward too, and like Longlegs confirmed is an agent pawn of the devil directly.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry, Mom. Sorry, God.
Sorry. And on that note, I loved the satanic themes. You know, I live for that. I love the references to the man downstairs, the Book of Revelations, magic dolls, serial killers, a plot twist. Like, it did have a lot going for it, because I don't want you to get the wrong idea and think that I didn't like it, because I actually really enjoyed watching it.
I mean, if we're going to go into like our opinions about it, there's one last thing I want to mention that you reminded me of was I really liked the way things would come in and out of focus in this movie.
Oh, yeah. There is that pan that they do. That's like that really weird slow zoom where it's like they're changing the focus and zooming at the same time. It's almost like nauseating.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And even that with the devil character, it's like, wait, you saw the eyes for a second and then you didn't? Like, I just thought it was fantastic.
The specter, like the shadow of like the big demon kind of like over the background.
Right.
And then it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say my final grade for this movie is probably a B minus, maybe. I thought it was a great movie, but I almost felt like it was more of like a streamer or something. Like, I didn't feel like it was a big theatrical thing because it was too overhyped. Had I not bought into all the hype and I didn't hear the hype and I just went and saw it, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. But people were like, I'm so scared to go. This is going to be the most terrifying movie ever. And I was like, not really. I mean, it's good, but it's not the most terrifying movie I've ever seen. What did you think?
I'm going to go B+. I really, really, like I said, I adored Longlegs. I left with a smile on my face. I agree with you. I think that it is overhyped, but I also wonder how desensitized we are to certain things, because the one thing that here's how I know that I'm messed up. I wanted more gore. I thought that we were going to really get it, because even in some of the marketing, you see the axe kill and you see a couple of things, or like, you know, there's a certain character who gets shotgun blasted to the face and then they pull away right at the last second and we don't see it. And I was like, ooh, dang. And I think with that, I was like, oh, wow, this is a thriller. But I think that there are people who they're so creeped out by a film that they don't really know what to do with, that all they can say is, it's the scariest movie I've ever seen. I don't know. Like, I left. It gets under your skin, all this stuff, because it's a non-traditional thriller.
I can see that. I mean, I appreciate that there wasn't a lot of gore. I'm a fan of horror and fear. You know, I'm not a super fan of gore, believe it or not. So I didn't mind that they left that out. And the head bash scene, I was like, I didn't need that at the end. I'm like, let me eat my popcorn over here. But anyways, what did you think?
Yeah, that head bash stuff, it doesn't bother me to watch that kind of like brutalism. I'm kind of like, okay, this is not something that scares me.
Yes, queen.
Yeah, it doesn't scare me.
But are you conscious you're like, this is special effects? Like, you know, like when you're watching Terrifier, are you like, oh, this is interesting because it's almost art, or what? Or do you just, why are you desensitized to it? Because you kill all your competitors on your show.
It's not like I'm known to like kill people every year.
Head smash.
Decapitation. Sorry, Satana. No, I don't know. I think everybody has their own thresholds and triggers. Like that kind of like gross sort of physical stuff just is not one of my triggers. So, I mean, there's a lot of other ones, so I have no shortage. I actually really like Longlegs too. I'd give it like a B. I'll just go like right in the middle. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I've said that ad nauseum now, but I think that what it was actually kind of like interesting, atmospheric, cool. Again, love the Satanism that had a weird sense of humor. And it was kind of visually very interesting.
All right, so let's move on to Maxine, which is, of course, the third film in Ty West's X trilogy and is written, directed, produced, and edited. That's kind of crazy. By
crazy.
Ty West and distributed by A24. Quick synopsis. After the events of X, Maxine goes to Hollywood to become a movie star. It's all very 80s. People are getting killed around her. Richard Ramirez is active and killing at this time, and someone knows what happened to Maxine and has video of it and is harassing her. So, let's start with this. Was this movie scary?
No.
No.
Not really, no.
I feel like that's an interesting question, though, but it's not scary.
It's not scary, right? Now, well, was X and Pearl scary to you?
X is a little scary. Pearl is not scary.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think, going back to what you said a minute ago, we are very desensitized because there's a lot of killing, Satanism again. You know, there's death and prostitution, all these like really kind of like hardcore themes. And we're like, okay.
Okay, there was there was gore. There was definitely 80s like Fangoria kind of gore, right? But to me, it felt more like a Charles Bronson movie or something, like one of those 80s like adventure, kind of like a detective thriller kind of thing. Yeah, that was the vibe I got.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm waiting for the moment because we're saying like, is it scary? We're like, no, but. Do you have any like opening thoughts or like? Because
I just kind of want to go down the line and discuss all the elements of it and see what everyone. I mean, like, okay, what did you think of the whole '80s thing? Right, like the film, the grain, all of it. What did you think?
Fucking loved it.
You
man.
loved it.
I love this movie,
Okay.
dude. Maxine was so dope. Like start to finish, I was like, yes.
Okay, well then let me ask you: do you think head to head, Maxine or Longlegs would win? Which one?
Ooh. Oh, are we making Longlegs fight Maxine?
Yeah.
Or like to the two movies?
They're in an arena.
Oh,
the
they're
two of them are in an
You mean
arena.
Longlegs versus Maxine for real? Like
Yes.
Mia Goth versus Nicolas Cage?
Well, as their characters.
As their
Right,
characters.
right. I mean,
I bitch, money's on Maxine.
Yeah,
Maxine
honey.
will take her down no matter how long your legs are, sweetie. You're dead.
She's
And
like-
I'm going to stomp your nuts, too.
Yes. She's like, you know what I did to the last person who tried to kill me? I crushed their fucking head.
I forgot her
That
like country
headbutt.
bumpkin accent. It's so good.
Well, Longlegs could headbutt her. Think about that.
Oh, that's a big head.
I know.
big
And we don't
head.
know what she can do with those long legs because we never found out. So you don't know.
Well, also, I mean, what does she look like when she doesn't have her long legs on? Because she, you know, she's like, I have my long legs on. I'm like, oh, what do you look like
Who
without them?
knows? I also loved the 80s. I don't even think you need to ask me. Like, it was so nostalgic and stylish. It looked great. It sounded fabulous. Like, some of the artists on the soundtrack, Bananarama, Kim Petras, Donna Summer, ZZ Top, Animotion, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, New Order. It's just total 80s nostalgia overload in the best way.
I liked it too. I really liked the 80s vibe of it. It felt authentic because I can recall, like, think of Dress to Kill, right?
Absolutely Dressed to Kill.
Same world, but I'm like, this one cost bazillions of dollars to make it look like this, you know? It's just, I don't know. Like, I feel like we played with that a lot on Dragula with aging things and doing different time periods and stuff. So I was surprised that you were as like entertained by that part of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the thing that I loved about it is that it was like hyper 80s. Like you know, you can see a lot of films from the 80s and be like, oh yeah, like this is characteristically 80s. But it felt like Maxine basically was like, okay, cool, let's take everything that feels 80s and then it's just that the entire time. There's no filler. Oh, this is just a result of the budget. This is like everything is purposefully 80s, gritty, dripping Hollywood.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it too, because yes, 80s is kind of the overarching umbrella, but right under that is the Hollywood grit, the Hollywood experience.
Yeah.
This industry, what your agent does for you, you know, that kind of stuff. Like it's ruthless. And I think she describes herself like that in previous iterations, like in Pearl. And in X we hear that kind of language where like this female character is conveyed as like just a ruthless kind of like killer, and she carries that through.
It really is one of the first depictions of Hollywood Boulevard in that area that I was like, this is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? We're getting the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but I think that generally, if you don't live in LA and you've never really hung out in Hollywood, you're like, ooh,
She's
glitz.
trash.
Yeah, you're like glitz and glamour, honey, and I'm like, no, like
No.
this is horror nightmare.
And before they built Hollywood and Highland, it was much worse.
Yeah.
And all those sex clubs and stuff were there. But it's funny, like it reminded me of when we used to do clubs. Like I feel like this is a girl that could have worked for us back in the day.
Oh my God!
Hell
There's
yeah.
a scene that I'm going to talk about when we review this in a minute. But how many industrial goth parties did we go to where we had that band painted across our eyes? You can't count how many times that happened.
Oh my God.
What do we think of the big reveal at the end? Like who the killer ended up being? Were you surprised? Were you satisfied with it? What did you think?
Well, I went to campy as fuck at that point. I was like, wow, this is like a borderline Scooby-Doo episode.
Yeah.
You know, but somehow it was cohesive, right? We're still living in this kind of like hyper nostalgic 80s world, and I was kind of like, okay, like just kind of went with it because it was sort of fun.
I think at that point I had opened my Junior Mints box and I had eaten the entire thing. I was on a sugar rush, and I actually
Literally?
Basically, yeah.
No, did you order Junior Mints?
No, I didn't.
I
I
did.
didn't.
I
Oh, did
I was
you?
like, tonight it's Junior Mints.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was really excited by the reveal that it was her dad, because I think that we all are sort of like, oh, okay, well, like this is Maxine Minx and this is who she is. I mean, we saw X, I think 3-ish years ago.
Yeah.
But the reveal that her dad is the preacher is literally the tail end of the first movie. It's like 3 seconds at the very end of the film. So for this to be the reveal here, I was like, because at first I was like, who the fuck is that?
Right.
And then
that's what I thought when it first came on. I was like, and what? Is this someone I don't know about?
I was like, oh no, it's this old guy. But then,
and if it wasn't for you kids.
yeah, exactly. But then when I realized what they were doing, of like, this is about to get capital S stupid.
Yeah.
Like this is gonna be 80s action, Charles Bronson, like shootout Hollywood sign bullshit. I was like, I love this movie.
It's awesome.
The
Like, it's so
gunfight,
stupid.
They purposely sort of recreated the way that people would get shot in movies in the 80s. Did you
Yeah.
notice that?
It's
the
that,
way they
like-
roll off the screen?
Yeah, or the like fall over awnings and stuff. Yeah.
I love that. Like, I was like, someone really spent their time researching this shit and reproducing it, because they did a great job of it, I think. I did not like who the killer ended up being, just because I'm like, how did you get up here? First of all, there's no way you could afford a house this close to the Hollywood sign. Like,
Oh, that was an Airbnb, honey.
exactly.
And she not getting that deposit back.
I know. I'm like, how are you here? Like, how do you have all these people working for you if you're just this small town preacher? I'm like, I don't know, you know? But I mean, at the same time, most of those movies, those kind of dress to kill kind of movies in the 80s had goofy reveals like that.
Yeah, I felt like it was, and I think that this is where I can see why certain people are not hugely into it. But for me, I'm like, this is, unless I'm mistaken, this is kind of how the 80s was. Like, you just be like, who's the killer? Who's the killer? Who's the killer?
Yeah.
It's the dad. And you're like, okay.
And it's so good the way the dad becomes the killer, and just you see it, and it's like this ritualistic, very Anton LaVey, Hollywood Hills, like horror house over the pool in like a pentagram, and she's tied up like a witch. I mean, this was
with
like
the
it had
palm tree.
everything.
Y'all want to hear my alternate ending?
Okay.
Yeah.
My alternate ending is after the gunfight and everyone's dead and Maxine is barely alive. The person that reveals themselves to be the killer is the director of the movie, who's like, I asked you if you were willing to do anything. You know, like that.
Oh, Elizabeth Bender, that producer.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's who I thought the killer was going to be.
Me too.
Like, 'cause
Oh,
even
really? I didn't think that at all.
Well, like they do, and I think that this is very Dress to Kill. It's very giallo. It's very, 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 very. Where the first time that we meet the director, she's wearing this like all black leather outfit, and she's described as having a temper, and she's like, you know, I've worked my ass off, like basically like, don't ruin this for me, but then also being like, I'm gonna push you. I'm gonna push you to become the monster that's inside of
and
you.
she has my favorite moment too. Like my favorite realization when it clicked. I was like, oh, I love that so much. That character, who's the ruthless producer director, her name is Elizabeth Bender. She says to Maxine, "This is the defining role in your career. Whatever's going on in your life that's interfering with this picture, squash it." And Maxine says, "Oh, I intend to." Yes! And then it follows up with this super fabulous, like strobing 80s club scene where she's like painted to the gods in that look that we wore a million times. And she's setting up a kill, and it culminates in her target being cuffed to a vehicle and literally getting squashed by a car-crushing hydraulic compactor. Blood and gasoline everywhere. It was awesome.
So dope. Yeah, and then Giancarlo Esposito has that line where he's like, you get out of here. We'll clean this up. She's like, "Are you sure?" He goes, "That's what agents are for." Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God.
I wish my agent were like that. Shit.
Brian, you need to start killing people for me.
Hey, maybe we don't know what Brian does on the weekends.
Well, I hadn't gotten rid of any of my enemies yet. I gave him the list. Okay, so what else should we talk about? Did you think this was a satisfying finale to the trilogy?
Listen, I think it was, because it had enough connective tissue to the other ones where it was like, okay, this is still in world, but I think Ty West made a distinct decision to say, hey, yes, it's a trilogy, but each one of the 3 installments has its own flavor, its own visuals, its own style, and I think Maxine definitely stands on its own, and it was a great ending.
I fully agree with that. The only other thing that I'll say is I was getting ready to be really disappointed, because I thought that when Maxine was up on the Hollywood sign with the shotgun and the police show up, I was like, oh my God, the whole thing is going to be that she's going to become infamous. Like, she is going to become the Night Stalker, and like it's going to be pinned on her. And I was really bummed. I was like, damn, I get it, but I'm rooting for Maxine. Like, that's the hero for me. Like, this cocaine snorting, just badass.
Totally.
And so then when she wins, I was like, yes, ma'am. Maxine.
It's all dark-sided. It's all dark-sided. The Night Stalker, Psycho, cocaine, Hollywood Boulevard, sex workers, serial killers. I love it.
I don't know. I do wish it had a little bit of throwback to Pearl and the other, just to tie it together just a little bit more. I mean, I didn't remember the dad showing up at the end of X, so when you reminded me, I'm like, okay, that makes it a little more viable, because I was like, surely, did we see this guy before? I'm like, I don't know. So
no, totally, because even then, it's like you barely see him.
Right.
Like, he appears several times as like the preacher, but it's not revealed that he's the dad. And it's honestly, it took me until the second time I watched it to be like, oh, that is her dad. Okay,
oh, yeah, because I mean, she's the only one that survives all of those films. Obviously, she's the only one alive from Pearl. And X2, everybody got killed, right? She was the last. So
yeah.
So it was kind of, I don't know, that was kind of interesting too. Like, how does the dad get a hold of the footage and all that stuff? But I think overall, it was a very fun movie, and I definitely enjoyed it. How about you guys?
I agree. And kind of in closing, like, I think Daddy and Longlegs again. Longlegs' expectation was way up here, and it kind of under-delivered a little bit, even though I still liked it. Mm-hmm. And Maxine, I was kind of floating in the middle, because it's getting like mixed reviews, but it outperformed my expectation. Like, it was better than I thought it was going to be.
100% same. I love Maxine. I think that Maxine is really fun, which is the thing. I mean, I've seen X, I think 3 or 4 times, because I think X is really fun, but also X is like, whoa, that's a lot of movie. I mean, it does have that one guy in his panties, which is nice. But beyond that, it's not a fun movie. And Pearl is great, but it's more like drama character.
Yeah.
Maxine is like, and I think, again, this is the 80s of it all. Like, invite your friends over, have some popcorn, have some adult beverages if you want to do that, and just let Maxine play in the background. It's just fun.
I want to see Maxine on screen again.
Me too.
I love her.
Yeah, I want to see her again. Like, you're like, okay, she's like Charles Bronson now. So, like, what's the next movie? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. But do you all think that this trilogy and Mia Goth, you know, her character in it, will become kind of iconic in the horror space, or do you think that it'll just sort of like, fade out after a while?
I can't tell anymore. I mean, I think there's so much content out there and everything moves so quickly. A lot of things will bubble up and kind of have like a huge explosion of, interest and popularity, but then it fades just as quickly. So I don't know what's going to stick.
Yeah, me neither. I actually don't think that Maxine is going to have the same sticking power as, let's just call it out. I mean, Art the Clown is everyone's new horror girl.
Right.
And I think that Maxine is not the cult pleaser that Terrifier is, but I do think that Maxine now enters sort of Mia Goth is a scream queen for me.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Mia, if you're listening, I'd love for you to be a guest on Dragula.
Oh, hell
She needs to be a season, like a, episode 1 kind of guest.
Yeah.
Okay, so which of our 2 movies in our double feature wins? You have to pick one over the other. Which one is it going to be?
What Jennifer did. No, I'm kidding.
Xenobottom.
For me, it's Maxine, for sure.
Yeah, I am surprised to say this because I really didn't think that this is how I was going to feel, but Maxine.
I think Maxine won for me too.
Wow. XXXXXX3.
Ah.
It's triple X for Maxine. I love it.
Now, I did like Longlegs. I definitely liked it. I thought it was
Same.
I
creepy.
think we all did, yeah.
It was so atmospheric. But yeah, I think Maxine won as far as like overall movie-going experience.
All right. And on that note, dear listeners, we are going to take a quick break, but we will be right back. All right, my darlings, we are back, and it's time to answer your listener questions. Remember, if you have questions or comments for us, email us at creatures@bouletbrothersdragula.com, and we will read and answer your query on air. Ian, would you do the honors?
Oh, it would be my pleasure. Cole from Kansas City asks, what is your experience with Filth? When did you discover it? When did it become a part of your pillars of drag? What does it mean to you? What Filth movie or live show or character just blew your mind?
All right. We both probably have different interpretations of this. But for me, my first sort of experience with Filth and drag was Divine and John Waters movies. 100%. Yeah, and I absolutely loved it. Now, do I like gross shit? Do I like her eating dog shit and all that? No. I actually, surprising to hear, do not like gross shit like that at all. I don't like it at all. But I like that it exists because it pushes a boundary of comfort in our society. And so I appreciate it. So when Divine was doing those things, yes, it was just stunt queen bullshit to get people talking.
Or dog shit in her case.
Right. But but it really pushed the boundary of sort of, quote, decency.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so irreverent. It's such a slap in the face, I think, to like middle America and half the world.
Yeah.
Which is why I love it too.
And part of it's gross, right? Then the other part of it was when I was in between high school, college, like I had been in high school because I was like too young to get into a bar or anything, but I could drive. We would try to go drink. And you know, obviously you couldn't drink. You know, you couldn't get into a regular club or a bar or anything because you're not old enough. But where you could get into was the really filthy gay bars in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And they were down by the wharf. And it was like an 80s movie. It was like Maxine or something. It was like no cop would ever go there. And in those places is where I saw live drag for the first time. In these crazy old dingy gay bars, and it was filthy, and there were people turning tricks, and there was naked go-go dancers, and it was just a total filth paradise. And while I was like, yes, I'm a little skeezed out by this, I would laugh. I loved the camp of it.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of my years in New York City too, because it was social media explosion. You didn't have a million phones in the city. So what happened in a club just stayed in the club, and a lot of stuff happened in the club. And around the club, above the club, below the club. It's just crazy.
Back behind
Exactly. And I think that drag world and the club world, and because it's not just about nasty stuff or like dog shit or whatever.
Right.
It's about irreverence and kind of like unsavory subject matter, drugs and like this kind of stuff. Like I categorize all of that as filth. And I think living in major cities has really kind of like put me through all of that and kind of got a lot of experience with it.
Well, that was the idea when we created Dragula. It was sort of an answer to how clean drag had become, because Drag Race had brought drag to the mainstream. And in order to do that, because I think they want to be a big, broad, appealing show, they cleaned up drag so much and whitewashed it so much that it felt very safe and inauthentic to me. And so for Dragula, I'm like, I don't want people to forget what drag is and where it was born, in these nasty, crazy places with shocking shows and all this kind of stuff. So for me, it was important to always include that element on the show, even though it's not my favorite thing.
Nico from Santa Cruz writes, if you don't already listen, I think you might love Rotten Mango too. Her true crime podcast covers a lot of stories from Asia and translates the news articles, cases that I would have never heard of otherwise. Episode number 359, 20 police officers listened as he sliced her into 365 pieces, is an absolutely insane case.
Wow. And this goes really hand in hand with our exploration of Asian horror, which is what we've been doing for the past couple of weeks.
I'm kind of into the idea of this podcast. We should check it out.
I mean, I would...
It's no two T's in a pod.
It's no two T's in a pod, but okay. The truth is, I don't care what it's about. With a name like Rotten Mango, I am totally there.
I know. I feel like that's something Ian would tell us about.
I
you
love
have
it.
to listen to Rotten Mango.
I was on the internet yesterday and I found this video called Rotten Mango.
A lot of people wrote in with true crime recommendations after last episode too. And so we have a whole huge list of stuff if we want to delve into that in a future movie review.
Tracy says, I just watched the episode, My BFF Tried to Kill Me, after listening to your podcast, and all I can say is that I wanted to snuff Rachel out myself, especially after being subjected to seeing all her duck-lipped ER selfies. Jamie may have ordered the VRSA, but I actually believe it was Rachel doing it, acting as her. I also call BS on the relationship status, definitely scissoring, and more to it than, quote, just friends. And
Tracy has opinions.
Yes! And I believe that Rachel was more than likely stockpiling semaglutide/Ozempic and injecting herself. Regardless, the bitch is so vain, I'm sure there were more than a few mirrors available for her to take a look at her neck incision herself just to see how infected it was.
You know who makes semaglutide as Ian...
Semaglutide? What?
It's
Semaglutide.
T-West.
Isn't it?
Is it semaglutide?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, like, the way it's spelled here is definitely not
The
that.
inventor is T. West.
Oh my god.
I'll pick a word to mispronounce before this podcast is over, too.
I love that she went into...
Oh, she read.
Into this episode.
She read them.
Yeah, what do you think? Did you think that girl had more to do with it than she said? Do you really think maybe it was like...
Is Tracy saying that the one who was the victim was kind of doing it to herself?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't believe that.
You don't?
I kind of don't. I like the idea that there's like the psycho roommate trying to take your son and like, you know, infecting you with diseases and stuff. Like it's good.
I do think maybe they were scissoring, but I don't think she was a lesbian. I think the killer was a lesbian, but the other one wasn't. But she fucked her. Like that's the impression
Trade.
that I get.
She was trade 'cause she stayed there, yeah,
Yeah, because she was like, well, I want to live here for free, so I'll fuck you. But you know, I'm not really into it. I'm still gonna date guys, which she was still dating men.
The story
Anyways.
of so many people here in Los Angeles.
What's a little scissoring between friends? LG from Orlando writes, how do you keep inspired through the years? And how different is it for you both now that you have vast legions of fans all over the world?
I mean, keeping inspired isn't difficult because I think before we even did anything, I mean, I think when I was like, we were just talking about this the other day, I'm like writing horror stories in my head when I'm like 4 and 5 years old, like at a very, very young age. And so for me, that was just self-expression in the world I lived in. And I didn't think at the time, how can I make this into content? Or, you know, I wasn't thinking like that. So I think that comes naturally, at least for me. So that's not an issue. But mentioning the fans, now that we do have fans like that around the world, it is very motivating. It's a great reminder. Like I used that on tour because I'll be honest with you, I was burned out when we went on tour. I was burned out. I was like, I do not want to get in drag. I do not want to do this. I'm like, fuck this industry. That's just the truth.
And you know what was weird? You never talked about it. I mean, by the end of the tour, I wanted to just open the window of the bus and jump off a bridge because drag was like, oh God.
But every night we would do the meet and greet, and I was like, I can't wait to go on stage now. Like after meeting everybody in the meet and greet. So the fans have been a huge boost and support for me. I don't know. How do you feel?
I agree. I almost feel like this might kind of sound funny, but I almost feel like we now have a responsibility. We've gotten the support and the love and the admiration and the support from people that like what we're doing. So now we need to continue to deliver that so that they can, it's a reciprocal kind of relationship. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the fans are super motivating. And for me, I feel like I've always had an overactive imagination. I went to art school, and all through the theater and high school and all the stuff that I've done, it's always been about creativity. So then meeting Drac, it's like the two of us we've been in a conversation for 20 years. It's like a creative brainstorm, like forever since the day that I met you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
And we're never going to run out of ideas.
We won't. I mean, we would have ideas no matter if we were just playing like D&D or something.
Totally.
Like, yeah.
Ivy from Michigan writes, I'm wondering what a few of your favorite psychological horror films are. I personally like Midsummer, but I know it's not for everyone.
Midsummer was great.
It was great. What do you think? Do you have a favorite?
I don't know, because I think that even the psychological horror films I like are also weirdly body horror. Like the first film for me is like Possessor, but a Possessor is so just like.
Is that one of your favorite movies?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It was great. It was
Possessor.
really good. One of my favorites that you wouldn't really call it a horror, but I think it's a horror is Fatal Attraction.
Diva, that movie is terrifying.
Well, it's kind of a thriller too, right? Or no?
Yes,
it was
is a thriller.
like now, like Maxine, for example, I think was kind of a thriller horror. Mm-hmm. But back then, I think you kind of had to pick a lane, and I felt like they always threw that in the thriller lane. But I think that movie's terrifying.
Oh yeah, we don't really get a lot of. I mean, I guess maybe Maxine is a good example, like erotic thriller.
Yeah.
When we watched Fatal Attraction, I was gooped. Yeah. I was like, this movie is awesome.
It's twisted.
And really scary.
I think on the same shelf, and we've mentioned it during this podcast, is Dressed to Kill, too. There is definitely like a psychological aspect to that movie.
Why is that our favorite movie?
We live for Dressed to Kill.
Yeah, we love Dressed to Kill.
Yeah, we live for Dressed to Kill.
Oh, I'm so sad. What happened with Heclina, because Heclina, I want her to be in Dressed to Kill 2 so bad.
Yes.
Or a parody movie we made or something. We could have done it as a skit on Dragula, and she would be the killer, and the competitors had to act like the other people.
That would have been amazing.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Creatures of the Night. A little reminder, we will be at Midsummer Scream in Long Beach on Friday, July 26th, Saturday, July 27th, and Sunday, July 28th at the Long Beach Convention Center. You can get your tickets at midsummerscream.org. And don't forget, you can catch all three of us doing a live podcast, an exclusive panel at 6 p.m. on Saturday. We will see you there, uglies.
The Boulet Brothers Creatures of the Night is hosted and produced by Dracmorda and Swantula Boulet, along with co-host Ian DeVogler, with music by Neuron Spectre.